The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and steamed milk was a constant, comforting presence in the quiet corner. It was an apt name for the small, unassuming cafe nestled between a bustling military recruitment office and a laundromat. The cafe's proprietor, a woman named Lena, moved with a quiet, practiced grace behind the polished mahogany counter. Her hands, despite their constant work with boiling water and steaming pitchers, were steady and unmarked. She wore a simple, dark green apron over a plain t-shirt, and her hair, the color of rich earth, was pulled back in a neat bun. To the regulars, she was just Lena, the best barista in the district. Among those regulars were two young soldiers, brothers in arms by virtue of their service and in spirit by their shared humor. Liam was the older, with a perpetual grin and a scar above his right eyebrow from a training exercise gone wrong. Alex was the younger, his face still holding the soft edges of youth, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and trepidation about their upcoming deployment. They were just two of a dozen or so soldiers who frequented the shop, finding a brief sanctuary of normalcy before returning to the structured, high-stakes world of military life. On this particular morning, the cafe was a picture of serene mind. Sunlight streamed through the large front window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The gentle hiss of the espresso machine provided a soothing backdrop to the low hum of conversation. Liam and Alex sat at their usual table in the corner, nursing lattes. A small, portable, tactical radio sat between them, a silent sentinel that was never truly off. It was a constant reminder of the world just outside this quiet haven. Suddenly, a breaking news alert flashed on the cafe's large TV screen, which was usually tuned to a soft rock music channel. The music cut out, replaced by a grave-faced news anchor. The words "Urgent Broadcast, Sector 427 Engagement" were emblazoned across the bottom of the screen. "I'm receiving reports of a major hostile incursion in Sector 427, the anchor announced, his voice tight with urgency. "Our defensive grid has been breached. The enemy forces, identified as the insurgent splinter group known as the Crimson Dawn, have deployed a massive assault on the Blackwater supply line. Command reports. They are overwhelmingly outnumbered and are requesting immediate reinforcement." A collective gasp went up from the cafe's patrons. For the civilians, it was a distant headline, a fleeting moment of anxiety. For Liam and Alex, it was a cold, hard dose of reality. They were part of a rapid response unit, and Sector 427 was their next posting. The enemy was already there. The tactical radio between them, which had been silent for hours, suddenly crackled to life. It was a rapid, coded burst of static. Alex's hand flew to the device, his face now a mask of pure terror. "It's a full-scale assault," Liam said, his voice flat with disbelief. "They broke through the shield grid. They're hitting Blackwater." He looked at Alex, and for the first time, saw the fear that had been lurking beneath his brother's confident exterior. Lena, who had been wiping down the counter, paused. Her movements had always been precise, but now they were almost unnervingly still. She watched the news report, her eyes betraying none of the emotion that was churning in the room. Her quiet, serene presence seemed to hold the mounting panic. At bay for a fleeting moment, the news anchor continued, his voice strained. "We're getting a live transmission from Blackwater. The situation is critical. Our forces are pinned down, taking heavy casualties. They are attempting to hold the line, but command reports it's a matter of minutes before they are overrun. The Crimson Dawn has deployed their heavy siege vehicles, a tactic they haven't used in over a decade. This is unprecedented." Another coded burst from the radio. Liam's eyes widened. "That's command. They've authorized a full retreat. They're pulling everyone back." But it was too late. The cafe, situated just a few blocks from a key military intersection, was now in the line of fire. Outside, the low rumble of heavy vehicles and the distant report of automatic weapons fire grew louder, shaking the windows. The cafe was no longer a quiet haven. It was a potential battlefield. A young private, fresh-faced, and clearly terrified, rushed into the cafe, his uniform askew. "They're here. They've surrounded the sector. The perimeter is breached," he stammered, his eyes wide with fear. The soldiers in the cafe, their faces pale, instinctively moved to a defensive position. They had their personal sight, but against the armored vehicles and overwhelming numbers of the Crimson Dawn, it was a futile gesture. A sense of hopeless dread filled the room. Lena stood behind her counter, a silent observer to the unfolding chaos. She put a freshly polished coffee cup back on its rack, her movements still measured and calm. Alex, his young face streaked with sweat, fumbled with his tactical radio. The signal was weak, barely there. "Liam," Alex said, his voice a desperate whisper. "The last transmission, a final Hail Mary. They're looking for an asset, a call sign." Liam's brows furrowed in confusion. "What asset? They've pulled all the top brass. We're on our own." "No, this is different," Alex insisted. "It's an old one, a ghost. It's an encrypted message for Valkyrie." The word hung in the air, a whisper of a myth, a legend from a war that ended before most of them were born. Valkyrie, a pilot of almost mythical skill, an Apache gunship commander who had been instrumental in turning the tide of countless battles, and who had vanished without a trace over a decade ago. It was a bedtime story for young soldiers, a name to be whispered with reverence and awe. They had all heard of Valkyrie, but no one believed she was real. As the word Valkyrie left Alex's lips, the gentle rhythm of Lena's movements behind the counter stopped. It was as if a record had been scratched to a halt. The air in the cafe, already thick with tension, grew impossibly still. The only sound was the distant, ominous rumble of the enemy's advance. Lena's hands, which had been so calmly wiping down a mug, clenched into fists. A slow, chilling change came over her. The gentle, serene look on her face was replaced by an expression of pure, focused intensity. Her eyes, which had always seemed soft and kind, now held a fierce, unblinking fire. She looked at Alex, and a voice, not her gentle barista's voice, but one that was low, clear, and commanding, cut through the fear in the room. The transmission, details. Now, Alex, startled by her sudden change, stared at her. What? The transmission, Lena repeated, a flicker of impatience in her eyes. Give me the datapad. Liam, a flash of recognition in his eyes, handed her his datapad. He had only ever seen that kind of focus once before, on the faces of top-tier field commanders. He had never seen it on a barista. Lena took the datapad, her fingers moving with a blur of speed and precision that left the soldiers in awe. She wasn't just tapping. She was navigating complex, military-grade encryption protocols in seconds, bypassing security firewalls that would take a dozen analysts hours to crack. She found the source of the transmission, a hidden command frequency, and typed a short, coded sequence. The datapad flashed green, confirming her connection. The distant rumble outside grew louder. The cafe windows rattled. The young private from before whimpered, his eyes fixed on the street outside. Lena's face was a mask of cold concentration. She spoke into the datapad, her voice a low murmur that was meant for no one else. She rattled off a string of coordinates, tactical codes, and a single, chilling instruction. Apache Blackhawk, on my mark. I repeat, on my mark. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. They hadn't seen any helicopters. They were surrounded. This was a fantasy. Then, Lena straightened up, her shoulders squared. She looked at the young private, her eyes scanning the street behind him. On the corner of 5th and Jefferson, she said, her voice a calm, powerful command. A heavy siege vehicle, 3 armored escorts. They are the head of the spear. Eliminate the spearhead. The private stared at her, then at Liam, for a sign that this was a joke. It wasn single quotes T. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, not from the rumble of the enemy, but from a new, terrifying sound. It was the distinct, rhythmic thud-thud of a helicopter rotor blade, a sound that carried a cold, deadly promise. The sound was not coming from the military base. It was coming from directly above them. The enemy forces, who had been advancing confidently, stopped dead in their tracks. Their triumphant shouts turned into a confused, nervous chatter. Their armored vehicles, which had been rolling forward, suddenly halted. And then, a new, chilling transmission, a voice that was not human but a low synthesized echo of Lena's own voice, crackled over all known military and insurgent frequencies. It was a single, unadorned call sign, repeated twice. Valkyrie, you are in my sector. On the TV screen, the news report shifted. The anchor, his face a mask of utter bewilderment, spoke into the camera. We're getting strange reports from the front lines. The Crimson Dawn forces, they've ceased their advance. They're breaking formation. It appears they are in a full-scale retreat. A complete panic. Outside the cafe, the rumble of the heavy siege vehicles began to recede. A frantic, disorganized withdrawal. The sounds of combat faded into the distance. The street, which had been on the brink of becoming a war zone, was now silent again. Save for the lingering echoes of the helicopter rotors, the soldiers inside the cafe stood in stunned silence, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. Alex, his hand still on the tactical radio, looked from the TV screen back to Lena. The gentle barista had returned, her face once again serene, though a cold glint remained in her eyes. She was calmly polishing a coffee mug, as if nothing had happened. Liam, however, couldn't take his eyes off of her. He looked at the coffee cup, then at the woman who had just ended a battle without firing a single shot. The tension in the room broke, replaced by a wave of raw, unadulterated awe. Liam said, his voice full of a deference he had never shown to anyone. Who are you? Lena placed the polished mug on the counter with a soft clink. I'm Lena, she said, her voice now back to its soft, unassuming tone. And I make a very good latte. She offered no more explanation, but none was needed. They knew. The name Valkyrie was not a myth. She was real, and she was standing right in front of them, living a quiet life as a barista. The news reports confirmed the inexplicable retreat. The military command was baffled but grateful. Later that day, a senior officer, her former commander, arrived in a discreet black transport to personally thank her. He called her by her military designation, and the reunion was emotional. It revealed more about her past sacrifice, the reason she had left the service. She had flown a mission that had saved countless lives, but had come at a heavy cost to her own psyche. She had found peace, and this life, though ordinary on the surface, was what she needed. She was offered her old position back, but she declined. Her war was over. The coffee shop was her new field of battle, and its quiet corners were her well-earned refuge. The story ends with her back behind the counter, making a latte for a young private, a silent understanding passing between them. He no longer saw her as just Lena, the barista. He saw her for what she truly was, a quiet legend, a protector, a Valkyrie in disguise. Her ordinary life was now seen for what it truly was, a peaceful refuge for a war hero.